Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Magdalena Musiał-Karg and I'm representing Adam Mickiewicz University. Somewhere here there is also Kapsa, Dr. Izabela Kapsa from Kazimierz University in Bydgoszcz. We are realizing together a project devoted to e-voting and wanted to share with you some results of our research. So we decided to title our presentation Polish Mass Media Coverage and Public Opinion on E-Democracy, Example of Electronic Voting. We are dealing mainly with e-voting, and that's why this topic, this title of the presentation. So as an introduction, we would like to say that due to the rapid development of new technologies and their, let's say, impressive communication capacity, the internet has fundamentally changed modern democracies by providing new opportunities and easy and universal access to information, participation, also political involvement. Opinions among e-democracy theorists differ, but most of them share the belief that online communication may overcome the barriers in contemporary liberal democracy politics. The research subject of our presentation of our paper is related to e-democracy, understood as the use of ICT to support and enhance democratic institutions and processes. And in this understanding, e-democracy has the potential to widen the range of available participation tools and to strengthen participatory opportunities, prerequisites, and for citizens' political participation. One of electoral participation tools is e-voting, and in the majority of countries, regardless of how many problems e-voting generates, let's say, citizens show very positive attitudes towards this tool. And this is noticeable in the public debate stage before e-voting is actually introduced in many countries. As e-voting systems may be considered to be a technological innovation, we may assume that e-voter profile in Poland, because we are dealing with Polish case, would converge with the evidence from the research into the e-voting practice. The main aim of this paper is to explore whether and how e-voting has been presented in the Polish media, as well as to investigate public opinions on this tool in the context of political factors. Just before I will go to the results of our study, I will only say that e-voting, as we know, is a tool used in elections and referendums, and it involves the use of electronic means, at least to cast votes. Of course, the, let's say, history of e-voting is quite long, and electronic systems were used in voting in 1970 for the first time. Regarding Poland, I would say that Poland has no, let's say, rich experiences with e-voting, because we do not have possibility to vote via the internet online, but there are some small I would say pilot experiences regarding this tool. And one of them, the most important one, I would say, is not related with the national voting, but voting within one of the political parties in Poland, parliamentary parties, a civic platform. In 2010, in spite of the fact that we do not have any national tools to vote online, this party, just before presidential elections in 2010, they organized elections within their party to enact the candidate for presidential office for presidential candidate. And it was one of the first experiences with, let's say, a kind of e-voting, because it, you know, in the legal terms, it wasn't e-voting, but it was kind of a step towards this this institution. And I should also point out that we do not have any laws supporting electronic voting in Poland. We do not have law, we do not have infrastructure, and we do not have also, I would say, any public supporting attitudes towards implementation of e-voting. But this topic is becoming always very popular before elections, mainly among representatives of many political parties. So, as I mentioned, our research aims were mainly to exploring whether and if yes, the e-voting has been presented in Polish mass media, and investigating people's opinions on this tool in the context of political factors. We used two, let's say, approaches. The first one was media content analysis, and we focused on 5 years, 2015 and 2020. And the second part of our study was based on own survey results from 2018. And the first part of our research was based on media content analysis. We collected data via CAST, content analysis system for television, and including the broadcasting coverage by the main news services delivered by 3 nationwide TV stations in Poland of the top ranking: Fakty TVN, Wiadomości, and Wydarzenia. The names are in Polish, but they are 3 main news services in Polish televisions. Wiadomości TVP, information, I would translate it, are from the public media, and Fakty and the facts and the Wydarzenia, events, let's say, they are from commercial private stations. The analysis covered 1,248 news in 28 newscasts of the 3 TV stations, and yeah, as I mentioned, it was designed to examine the position of top-rated TV stations on e-voting in their main newscasts. The results, which are, I think, very important, in none of periods examined in 2019 and in 2020 was e-voting or other voting method present in the news. The general conclusion might be that the debate on implementation on e-voting or any plans of implementation of e-voting in Poland is rather poor. And I would say that the main reason for that is that Poland has no specific legal provisions for introducing this voting method, and also shortage of technical infrastructure, and the access to the internet seems to be also problematic in some regions. The media content analysis covering this top-rated TV news in Poland has confirmed that the media debate regarding the introduction of e-voting in Poland is virtually non-existent. In the period concerned, the analysis showed that no news discussed electronic voting. What was also surprising us is that the fact that no information about e-voting was present in any of TV news during the COVID-19 pandemic and a debate on having safe presidential elections in the country. You probably know that in May we had to have presidential elections, but due to the failed electoral reform, they didn't happen, and they were moved to postpone to 28th of June. And then we had 2 rounds of presidential elections. They were made in a hybrid way, via traditional voting and via postal voting. But the postal voting, we thought that the postal voting would be a good incentive to debate on other remote voting methods. And unfortunately, nothing was in the media we had analyzed. And due to the lack of the data from the CAST analysis, we decided to expand the analysis and examine web-based TV news in the same stations. And it should be emphasized that this part of the analysis covered an extended period of time from January 2015 to May 2020. The generally available internet resources contain only 8 news on e-voting, of which the earliest was published in 2015, just after the parliamentary elections, and the latest one in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Based on our findings, I would draw some general conclusion. First of all, since 2015, the main initiator and the promoter for the debate on e-voting in Poland is one of the very small political group. It is called Cookies 15. They came into the parliament in 2015, and the leader of this political group is a rock singer. I would say they are quite populist party, and they are still pushing the, maybe not pushing, but they are supporting, they are promoting the topic of direct democracy and also of e-voting. They really support e-voting methods in elections and also in referenda. So they are, I would say, the main supporters of e-voting. What is also quite interesting that according to media content analysis in spring 2020, during the pandemic, electronic voting was referred into web-based news, mainly by journalists and representatives of Civic Platform and Polish People's Party. Both parties are opposition parties. And Civic Platform is the one party that organized this let's say, pre-presidential elections within their structures. Law and Justice representatives have not referred to e-voting at all in the news analyzed. In one of the news, the rock singer, the leader of the Cookies 15 movement, mentioned after the meeting with the president, Andrzej Duda, that the president, who is affiliated to PiS, would consider introduction of e-voting in the state referenda. So it was like a kind of support for their initiative. All the news presented on the internet were rather presented in a positive manner as an opportunity to increase citizen participation in decision making, and news on the internet voting were most frequent in commercial televisions. Only 1 out of 8 news was broadcast by the public TVP station. So moving to our e-voting in the context of political factors analysis based on our survey made in 2018, I would like to say that this survey was conducted by me and by Isa on a sample of 1,717 polls. It was a quota-based sample taking into account the demographics of the population. The analysis of survey results started from descriptive statistics and the e-voting support index, and the data presented in this table show that respondents' opinions regarding e-voting differ depending on their political preferences. I would say that the analysis of support to electronic voting in relation to political variables demonstrates that political preferences are a statistically significant predictor for voters' attitudes towards the introduction of the use of internet voting. We observe the lowest level of support among those who vote on for PiS, for Law and Justice, the governing party in Poland, and Polskie Stronnictwo Ludowe, Polish People's Party. It is one of the opposition parties right now. And both parties, Law and Justice and Polish People's Party, could be described as conservative and not necessarily progressive parties. It needs to be emphasized that the only political party expressing their objection to e-voting in Poland is Law and Justice, the one that governs the country. The positive attitude to e-voting among supporters of other political parties in Poland is scored higher than the population average. And it also corresponds with the views of these political parties on electronic voting. Some political parties in Poland have considered the implementation of e-voting, and these include PO, Civic Platform, the biggest opposition party, and mentioned Cookies 15, also party which is called Together, and also very radical, I would say, Janusz Korwin-Mikke party, which is really, I would say, controversial one. Supporters of parties promoting introduction of online voting are relatively reserved and discreet in declaring they support to use e-voting as a method of voting, because I would say they better recognize certain threats than supporters of other political parties. And these differences can be explained by the correlation between age and education and the proficiency in using technology. Younger, more educated people, most of them are supporters of e-voting promoting parties, have probably higher levels of computer skills, and they are more critical about security issues than people who lack the knowledge to be able to detect potential threat to security. And now, as a final slide, some conclusions. First of all, the internet has fundamentally influenced democracy by providing easy and universal access to information, participation, and involvement, and e-voting is proof for it. Our main goal was to answer the question about the presence of a debate on electronic voting in general and remote or internet voting in particular in Polish news. And according to our study, we would say that Polish media neither convey information about e-voting nor initiate debate on this subject. As I mentioned, according to the study, the main top-rated TV news in Poland are not the actors promoting or initiating the debate about e-voting in Poland. Also during the pandemic, which we perceive as a very, very unique time, an incentive that could be incentive to promote this remote e-voting, this remote voting method. And due to the lack of data, we, as I mentioned, we decided to expand the analysis and examine online news by the same stations. And as I mentioned, only 8 informations on e-voting were founded. In Poland, the study of public opinions on the implementation of e-voting as an alternative participation method has proven that the general public declares a high level of support, and the mean of these declarations was 3.61 out of 5, so it was rather high result. And we find some differences in attitudes of Poles towards e-voting depending on their political preferences, but not on their electoral participation. We find out that people support e-voting, but they are rather more, let's say, a distance if it takes to declaration that they would vote via online voting. Therefore, we may conclude that regardless the presence of e-voting in media, the access to the internet, a medium which is neither controlled by the media nor the business, encourages citizens to use the tool. Preferences shaped by the web-based community can be surprising, and the example of Poland is one of a very good proof of it. Thank you very much for your attention, and that's all from me right now.
Thank you, Magdalena, for very interesting. Okay, Tomago has one.
Well, what would be your opinion when it comes to organizing e-voting on the national level? Because as we heard Norbert this morning, that even on the local elections in Germany these days, they have lots of problems with e-voting, because even though there is a global pandemic and lockdowns all over the world, that it's not even planned in the legislature. So it's, you know, it seems to me that concerning the voting, and when everyone talks about the election, say, well, we should be careful about COVID. But on the same hand, it seems to me that they are not working, that the government legislative is not working toward that direction. It seems to me they're just waiting to see what's going to happen. In my opinion, that would be like, I don't know, Croatia is a big tourist country, and if, you know, just all the players from the tourism just waiting for what's going to happen. I mean, if you don't provide the service, you know, you cannot be just how to say, surprised if that's not happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question. I would say that it is really very difficult to organize national elections via e-voting, and it's also related not only with the political factors, but also with the elements I mentioned during my presentation: the legal provisions, of course, the technical systems, also the people's attitudes and the political attitudes. But one of the very important factors is also the size of the country. When discussing e-voting, it's common that the main and the most popular and the most effective example of country that uses e-voting is Estonia. But we should remember that it is a very small country where it was much easier to implement such a solution than in bigger countries. Even Switzerland was trying, as we know, implementation of e-voting, and it was really, really challenging. They stopped it for some period of time. They are working still on it, but it's really difficult. And in my opinion, also in Poland, it would be really, really difficult to organize national e-elections or e-referendum. And if I would be responsible for such a let's say process, I would rather start from the smaller units, like, I don't know, maybe local municipality or something like that, just to see how it works, and yeah, to test it, to try it, and so on. At national level, it's really challenging and difficult in big countries, for big populations, and yeah, also the security measures are really, really yeah, challenging in it.
Okay, thank you, Magdalena. Maria Volarovic raised the hand, so Maria, please ask a question.
Hi to everybody. It was such an interesting presentation, and you did a really huge job to analyze media for the last 5 years. So I have also maybe just I need your insight on something like that. So you were analyzing how media is promoting e-voting, and this concept is really revolutionary, especially in the time of COVID crisis, where I think a lot of governments will be in the future turning their ways of political participation in that way. So as a new channel for, I think I see it as a way for gaining young voters to vote with this e-voting. Are political candidates and political parties also promoting e-voting? Are they in their campaigns suggesting to voters to register to e-vote? Are they informing them, or they're just still in their campaign activities as usual?
I think that the main tendency, let's say, is that, you know, just before the elections, they are waking up and they are, you know, realizing that maybe we can somehow catch some voters and change a bit our image into more innovative and yeah, and cool, let's say. And the situation happened in Poland, for example, in 2007. After 2 years of law and justice government, the coalition, which was rather exotic, I would say, has collapsed, and we had pre-term elections. And on that time, it was 3 years after our accession to the European Union, and many Poles, many young Poles went to Western European countries for looking for a job and so on. So the numbers were that about 2 million of people were abroad. And on that time, just before the elections, Civic Platform, in 2007, before the elections, it was a opposition party. It declared that it would, you know, implement the e-voting as a way for voting for those who are abroad. And it was the only, I would say it was one of the only one time. I'm asking also Isa, because we were working on it together, that, you know, any Polish party declared so strictly that they would implement e-voting. But after that, it is a silence, I would say. And, you know, Cookies 15, the rock star, I would say, that is in the Polish parliament from 2015, they are declaring that they support e-voting. But, you know, the political strength and their, how can I say, their strength, let's say, is not so big. And as I mentioned, the legal procedures, we have nothing for e-voting actually in Poland. So it is really important factor of yeah, being aware that next 10 years maybe it is. But yeah, among citizens, it's quite popular topic, because even the Polish ombudsman and also Polish opinion polls institutions are making polls on remote voting methods, and every year they are repeating the same questions about e-voting, and e-voting and postal voting seem to be quite popular.